Hello there. We're going to have a quick talk today about the Bill of Rights and the Doctrine of Incorporation. So let me get this baby fired up so we can actually view it. Okay, struggle bus, driving it. All right, here we go. So the Bill of Rights is, of course, the first 10 amendments that are added to the Constitution. And this is something that the Anti-Federalists really wanted because they feared the federal government would infringe upon their rights. And we want to look at how the Bill of Rights went from being only about the federal government to being about all of the country, including the states. So the first case I want you to look at really quick is this one that's called Barron versus Baltimore. And I want you to pay attention that this happens in 1833. Okay, so this is 1833. So at the time, the constitutional question is, does the Fifth Amendment deny states, as well as the national government, the right to take private property for public use without justly compensating the property's owner? So here's the backstory. John Barron owned a wharf, which is similar to a dock for boats or shipping. So I have a picture of it here, you can see, which was basically rendered worthless when the city of Baltimore, in the process of paving streets, blocked water for the wharf. So he felt that he had lost his income, and he sued the city of Baltimore for, at the time, $4,500, which is a tremendous amount of money, for damages under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, which says that the government cannot take your property without payment. So the question is, does the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution apply to cities and states, or is it just the federal government? Well, turns out at the time, in 1833, it's just the federal government. So the decision was that it ruled in favor of the city of Baltimore because it reasons that the Constitution was established by the people of the United States for their federal government, not the government of the individual states. Thus, the amendment that Barron is suing under restrains the power of the federal government, but not the states. So this means that the Constitution did not apply to states' governments, only the federal government. This will remain the case until after the Civil War. So we want to look at what happened after the Civil War. Well, boom, our boy Abraham Lincoln, who pushed through the Civil War amendments, as they're called. So here's a little reflection on that. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are collectively known as the Civil War Amendments. And they were designed to give equality, especially to the slaves. So the 13th Amendment states that it bans slavery and all involuntary servitude, except, of course, in the punishment for crime. The 14th Amendment defines a citizen. So this is the one that gave slaves their citizenship as persons born in or naturalized in the United States. This will overturn the Dred Scott Sanford case and the Supreme Court ruling stating that Black people were not eligible for citizenship. And then the 15th Amendment is the prohibition of government from denying United States citizens the right to vote. So these three collectively were created to protect the freed slaves from being denied their citizenship, from being denied their right to vote, and from being enslaved again. Now, what really happened is that somebody noticed the wording of the 14th Amendment, and suddenly states had to follow the Constitution too. So if you look here on the right, there's a quote from Carl Sandburg, and it says, before the Civil War, the 14th Amendment, the United States were. After the 14th Amendment, the United States is. So what I want you to notice in this quote is before the Civil War, the country was about states. After the Civil War, it is about the United States, meaning the country as a whole. So let's take a look at how this would affect things. So here's the 14th Amendment. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That due process of law is incredibly important. So you can't just do it because you want to. You got to go through the right steps. Nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. So now this means that the Bill of Rights applies to the federal government, but it also applies to the states. So if we looked back at Barron versus Baltimore, if this case had occurred after the Civil War, Barron would have won. If the federal government can't take your property without compensation, then a state cannot take your property without compensation as well. So the 14th Amendment is going to mean that the Bill of Rights applies to all citizens and all states. And this is really the foundation of the civil rights movement. Okay, thank you very much.